Have you ever wondered why you were born exactly the month you were? What if the date of your birth was more than just a mark on the calendar? What if there was an invisible, symbolic and ancestral code hidden in the seasons capable of revealing deep traits of your soul? Carl Jung believed that nothing in nature happens by chance, not even the moment we arrive in the world. There is a pattern, an archetype, a vibration that echoes in your existence from the moment you take your first breath. And perhaps by ignoring this call, we are leaving behind one of the greatest maps of self-knowledge ever inscribed in the very body of time. Today you are about to dive into this hidden dimension, not like someone reading an empty horoscope, but like someone deciphering an ancient symbol, forgotten but still alive, just waiting for you to see it. When Jung looked at human nature, he didn't just see behaviors or personality traits. He saw living symbols, patterns that echo the seasons, the lunar cycles, the tides of the soul. For him, birth was not a chronological fluke, but an archetypal inscription within the spiral of time. The date we come into the world carries with it a set of hidden meanings connected to the rhythms of the universe and the symbolic forces that structure psychic reality. Just as a seed doesn't germinate outside the right season, Jung saw in the month of birth an alignment between the individual and the archetypes active at that time. January, with its winter stillness, carries the silent weight of the whys of introspection, of the structure that prepares the new. March, with its fluidity between the end and the beginning, brings rebirth, resilience, the soul that has already faced symbolic death. August vibrates with the power of the regal archetype, the leader who commands not just with force but with presence. Each month, therefore, is not just an external frame. It is a symbolic field that surrounds us and influences us from birth, just as the phases of the moon influence the tides not by brute force, but by a subtle resonance that acts in depth. Modern physics, when it talks about information fields and entanglement, begins to touch on this wisdom. Consciousness, like a sensitive antenna, is shaped by the frequencies of the world around it, and Jung, decades before that, already said the time of birth is the time of the spirit. Not as a belief, but as an intimate perception that the psyche dances in harmony with the music of the cosmos. That's why understanding the symbolism of your birth month isn't superstition, it's self-knowledge. It's rediscovering the path your soul has chosen to follow and recognizing in the mirror of the calendar the forgotten contours of your destiny. This vision gains even more depth when we understand how the collective unconscious operates. Jung described this universal psychic field as a reservoir where the great symbols of humanity live: the hero, the healer, the warrior, the lover, the visionary. When we are born in a given month, our psyche aligns itself with one of these patterns, not in a rigid or deterministic way, but as someone who receives a symbolic mission. It's not about being a prisoner of a prefabricated identity, but about recognizing which archetypal energy pulses in our core and wants to express itself in the world. This energy is not a label, it is an invitation. For this reason, someone born in April may feel an urgency for action and justice that they don't understand rationally, but which resonates with the archetype of the warrior that April represents. Another born in September may be driven by an obsessive search for order and clarity, carrying the archetype of the analyst. And the most fascinating thing is that these archetypes are not just distant myths, they manifest in choices, challenges, relationships, crises, and even dreams. The shadow also acts there when we refuse to live the call of our archetype. It gets sick and manifests itself in a distorted way. The leader becomes a tyrant, the healer becomes a martyr, the sage becomes a bitter recluse. Integration requires awareness, and awareness begins with recognition. This is where synchronicity comes in as a bridge between the visible and the invisible. Signs from the external world, a phrase we hear, an image that touches us. A person who appears are not mere coincidences. They are symbolic responses from the universe to our internal field. If you were born in June and constantly find yourself mediating conflicts, seeking understanding between opposites, perhaps it's not just a skill. Perhaps it's your archetypal mission, your role in the great theater of existence. And to recognize this is not to limit yourself, but to free yourself. Because by understanding the pattern, you gain the freedom to live it in a conscious, creative, transformative way. Modern psychology studies into epigenetics and neuroplasticity confirm that we are shaped, but also molders. And it is this dance between destiny and freedom that makes the symbol of the birth month so powerful. It doesn't tell you what you should be, but reveals what your soul resonates with. It points in a direction, but it is you who walks. And in this journey, every gesture, every decision, every silence becomes part of a ritual, the ritual of living, in alignment with who you are, with what you carry, with what you have come to give to the world. Ignoring the symbols that shape the essence of our existence is like walking through a labyrinth blindfolded, stumbling over the same mistakes, repeating the same cycles without ever understanding why. Jung warned us that what is not recognized in consciousness manifests itself as destiny. And destiny in this context is not a force that comes from outside, but the sum of internal patterns that we ignore. When someone lives disconnected from the archetype they carry, they suffer. They feel lost, inadequate, disconnected from themselves and the world. Those born in February, whose spirit is visionary and rebellious, can be crushed by a life that is predictable and suffocated by rules. Those born in October, diplomatic by nature, can fall ill in environments of conflict and competition. To not understand the symbol of your birth month is to live without a map, without a compass, without ground. Modern science now understands that time is not linear as we imagined. There are biological rhythms, electromagnetic fields, planetary cycles that influence everything from sleep to mood, from productivity to fertility. Astrology, once viewed with disdain, is beginning to be revisited in the light of a more open physics, more connected to the whole. And Jung, who studied astrology in depth as a symbolic expression of the collective unconscious, saw it as a language not of predictions, but of meanings. By knowing what our month represents, by understanding the archetype that inhabits us, we begin to read the signs that life sends us. And this reading can change everything. It can change the way we choose partners, jobs, and cities, change the way we react to pain, failure, and silence. Because the symbol reveals where we are ready to flourish and where we still need to heal. What's more, it reveals what we have come to teach, because each archetype is a function in the larger body of humanity. And when you disconnect from it, you not only lose yourself, but you deny the world the part that only you could offer. This is why life's signs become more frequent and more intense when we move away from our symbolic path. Synchronicities recurring, dreams, feelings of déjà vu, unexpected losses. All of this could be the unconscious trying to wake us up. Life doesn't speak in words, it speaks in symbols. And if you were born in November and feel an inexplicable call to investigate the occult, to transform pain into wisdom, to delve into deep psychic territories, but you live stuck in a superficial routine, the universe will try to wake you up. Sometimes with subtle signs, sometimes with emotional earthquakes. Jung said that the greatest danger of modern life is the detachment from the symbol. We live in the literal, the utilitarian, the rational, but the soul doesn't feed on that. It feeds on meaning. And the symbol of your birth is a seed of meaning planted in you even before your first cry. Ask yourself, how many times have you felt out of place, as if you were living a life that wasn't yours? How many times have you found yourself trying to fit into patterns that didn't resonate with your innermost nature? How many times have you had the feeling that something inside you knew the way, but was silenced by external voices? These questions are not rhetorical. They are invitations, because the symbol wants to be seen. It wants to be lived. It wants to flourish, not to create a new identity, but to reveal the one that has always been there, suffocated under layers of expectations, fears, and other people's narratives. When you honor your month, you don't limit yourself, you free yourself. You understand why you feel the way you do, why you attract what you attract, why you suffer as you do. And more than that, you begin to choose clearly, choosing places that nurture your archetype, people who recognize your essence, paths that challenge but also expand. Reality is not static. It responds to the field you emanate. And this field, this subtle pulse that guides your life, begins to vibrate differently. When you live according to your symbol, the world changes. Coincidences align. Encounters gain purpose. And what once seemed like chance is now perceived as a response to a soul that has finally begun to listen. When Jung spoke about individuation, he wasn't proposing an abstract philosophical idea, but a practical path back to wholeness. where each fragmented part of the soul returns to its original place, and understanding the birth month within this journey is a powerful symbolic key. Each month represents an archetypal doorway, and by crossing it with awareness, we rediscover an essential part of ourselves. But the real miracle happens when we combine this with what ancient spiritual traditions already knew, that the entire universe is within us, and that each human being is a unique expression of a greater living and intelligent consciousness. The calendar is not just a marker of time, it is a mirror of the collective soul. And archetypes are not just symbolic images, they are living forces that interact with our biology, our emotional field, our deep psyche. Contemporary physics is beginning to touch on this mystery when it talks about morphogenetic fields, quantum coherence and resonance. Rupert Sheldrake, for example, proposes that there is an invisible field that guides the shape and behavior of living systems, a field that carries information beyond DNA, a collective memory that shapes patterns. Jung, for his part, already sensed this memory when he described the collective unconscious, where all the symbols of birth dwell. This convergence of science and spirituality points to an inescapable truth: we live in a symbolic, interconnected, vibrational universe. And the month in which you were born is a frequency within this cosmic symphony. Recognizing it is like tuning your inner instrument to the orchestra of creation. You not only understand who you are better, you begin to resonate with everything around you in a new, lighter, deeper, more coherent way. It is at this point in the journey that everyday life becomes a rite, and spiritual awakening ceases to be a distant, mystical experience and becomes an embodied practice. Because it's not enough to know your archetype, you have to live it. Those born in July with the archetype of the caregiver discover that their power lies in silent acceptance, in creating vibrational homes where people can be who they are. Those born in December, guided by the vision of the wise dreamer, realize that their mission is to inspire hope even in the darkest cycles. To live the archetype is to honor your original frequency, even if the world tries to impose another. And when you start to do this, you not only heal your own history, but you also activate a transformation in the field around you. Jung called this psychic alchemy, the process of turning lead into gold, not in matter but in the soul. Every time you choose what resonates with your symbol, you perform an alchemical act. You say yes to your essence and no to the noise. You break a collective pattern and inaugurate a new one. And in this process, synchronicity becomes more intense, more evident. Coincidences increase, connections deepen, dreams become messages, because the universe, when it realizes that you have begun to listen to it, begins to respond more clearly. And you start to live in a state of flow, where difficult decisions become intuitive, where time seems to expand, where life stops being an effort and becomes a dance. Real transformative spirituality begins here, in the alignment between the archetype you carry and the reality you choose to create. It's not in empty rituals, but in the living intention behind every gesture. It's in the way you listen to someone, in caring for your body, in being honest with your feelings. It's in respecting your birth time as a sacred code. When mind, body, and spirit vibrate in tune with this symbolic origin, everything changes. Suffering doesn't disappear, but it gains context. Pain doesn't disappear, but is transformed into wisdom. Doubt doesn't paralyze, but guides. And fear, which used to be a prison, becomes a master. This is the point of integration, when everything you were, everything you ignored, everything you tried to erase, comes back to you in a new light. No longer as a shadow, but as power. No longer as weight, but as direction. And the world, that sacred stage of symbols and mirrors, begins to show that awakening was never outside. It has always been there within the instant, when you decided to honor what you are, instead of seeking what you don't need to be. What if the month you were born is not just a coincidence but a calling, an ancient symbol vibrating silently inside you, asking to be remembered, lived, honored? What if the path to freedom lies not in running away from who you are, but in going deeper right there? Where the world has tried to erase, Jung believed that the soul whispers before it shouts. And perhaps right now it's just waiting for you to listen. What archetype is pulsating in your essence? What truth is trying to emerge from behind your silence? Don't leave this video with one more piece of information. Leave with a commitment to dive deeper into yourself. If this journey has touched you, subscribe to the channel and stay with us, because there is much more hidden beneath the surface. And sometimes, all that's missing is a symbol, a simple symbol, to awaken who you've always been.